Good morning, everyone. Mark Twain famously wrote these words: "If the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous dim puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of greatest names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in the world, in all the ages, and has done it with his hands tied behind him. He could be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now or have vanished. The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?" This is the question that perturbed Mark Twain. And his question indeed is a great question, because someone once said that we have about 14 million Jews in the world, and someone once said that that's smaller than the margin of error on the Chinese census. And consider the fact that we're less than 1/4 of 1%. Now, usually when something is less than 1/4 of 1%, it just automatically gets washed away in the overwhelming majority. Add to that in every generation there were enemies, including in our generation, who tried to destroy us and annihilate us. And yet all these mighty, powerful regimes are gone and we're here. And how do we answer Mark Twain's question? What is the secret to our mortality? And the answer is in this week's Torah portion. God tells Abraham, "I'm making a covenant with you," known as the Brit Milah, that every son, every boy at the age of 8 years old is circumcised in the same covenant of Abraham, our forefather. And in chapter 17, verse 7, God makes two promises to Abraham. He says, "I will establish my covenant between you and your children, between your descendants in the future, lidorotam, for all future generations, librit olam, an eternal covenant, to be your God and for your children afterwards." God promised that this covenant 4,000 years ago made with Abraham will be a covenant in all future generations, an eternal Brit for you, your children, forever. That's promise number one. Promise number two, "V'nasati l'cha l'zaracha," I will give to you, just like God told Abraham in this week's Parsha, go to the land of Israel. I'll give it to you and your offspring and your children forever. This land of Israel, the land of Israel, for a chuzat olam, an eternal inheritance. And I will always be your God. And here we live in 2018, and we see the words spoken by God to Abraham 4,000 years ago were fulfilled to the T. The Jewish nation lives on with no explanation except that God promised Abraham this covenant is eternal. And where do we live on? In the land of Israel that God told Abraham 4,000 years ago, "Go Lech-Lecha to the land that I'll show you." Do we need a clearer proof to the existence of God in the world? This is the only rational answer to Mark Twain's inexplicable question. And I want to tell you what happened in Israel yesterday. You know, during Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, a great hero of Israel, Ari Fuld, was murdered by a 17-year-old Palestinian who stabbed him, and as he fled, trying to attack another Jew, Ari Fuld, with a knife in his back, ran after him, shot the terrorist, and then collapsed and ultimately died. 45-year-old brave Jew by the name of Ari Fuld. Well, yesterday, one of his relatives with the same name, Fuld, I'm not sure if it's a brother or a cousin, had a baby boy 8 days ago. And yesterday was the Brit in Israel. And you know what they named the baby? Ari. Ari Fuld is alive again in this world. That's the secret of the immortality of the Jewish people. Our enemies may kill us in generation after generation, but we carry on with the covenant that is eternal, and we live on through our spiritual connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and the power that God invested in them. We are walking, living miracles in every generation. How fortunate we are to be part of this covenant.